Ambassador walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber for what she knew would be the last time. The room was enormous, built to make smaller species feel insignificant. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of worlds sat in their assigned sections, arranged by the importance their species held in galactic politics. Humanity's section was at the very back, in the shadows, where they had been placed 300 years ago when they first joined. She had walked this path so many times before. Each time she had come with hope. Each time she had left with disappointment. But today was different. Today she carried something new in her heart. It was not anger. It was not sadness. It was freedom. The High Chancellor stood at the central podium, his tall gray form towering over the chamber. His species had ruled the council for 12,000 years. They believed themselves to be the most intelligent, most civilized beings in the galaxy. They looked at humans the way humans once looked at insects. The council will now hear the proposal from the delegation, the speaker announced. Chancellor activated the holographic display. A map of the galaxy appeared, with human territory marked in red. It was small compared to the vast empires of the elder races. Just Earth, 3 colony worlds, and a handful of space stations. Fellow members of the council, began, his voice smooth and confident. For 3 centuries, we have watched the human species with growing concern. They breed quickly. They think strangely. They do not respect the natural order that has kept our galaxy peaceful for. Listened without expression. She had heard variations of this speech 100 times. Their unpredictability poses a threat to galactic stability, continued. Therefore, the delegation proposes the Human Containment Act. This legislation will permanently restrict human expansion to their current territories. They will not be permitted to colonize new worlds. They will not be permitted to develop certain technologies. They will remain where they are, safely contained, for the protection of all. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species nodded in agreement. Others whispered among themselves. None spoke against the proposal. None ever did when the wanted something. The speaker turned toward the human section. Does the human delegation wish to respond? Every eye in the chamber turned too. They expected what they always got from humans: protests, arguments, desperate pleas for fairness, promises to be better, to try harder, to prove themselves worthy. Stood slowly. She straightened her uniform and walked to the speaking platform at the center of the chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. She looked around the room, at the with their superior expressions, at the owl with their scales raised in amusement, at the who could not meet her eyes, at the dozens of other species who had spent 3 centuries treating humanity like unwanted guests at a party. Then she smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was not a diplomatic smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally stopped caring what others thought. The United Earth Coalition officially withdraws from the Galactic Accords, announced. Her voice was calm and clear, effective immediately. The chamber went completely silent. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody breathed. All non-human vessels currently in human-controlled space have 72 standard hours to leave, continued. All treaties between humanity and council species are void. All trade agreements are canceled. All diplomatic channels are closed. Chancellor's mouth opened and closed. His gray skin turned pale. Ambassador, you cannot simply. This is not how things are done. If you have objections to the proposal, there are proper procedures. There are no objections, interrupted. We simply no longer wish to participate in your council. We thought about it and decided that we would rather be alone than spend another day begging to be treated as equals. She gathered the few papers on her desk and placed them in her bag. You wanted us contained. Congratulations. We will contain ourselves, behind our borders, away from all of you. She walked toward the exit. Her footsteps were the only sound in the massive chamber. Wait, called out. There was something in his voice that had never been there before when speaking to humans. Uncertainty. You cannot do this. No species has ever voluntarily left the Council. In 12,000 years, not once. Stopped at the door, she turned back to face him. Then I suppose we are making history again. She tilted her head slightly. Did you know that humans have a saying, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them? For 300 years you have shown us exactly what you think of humanity. We were just too hopeful to accept it. Her smile returned. We believe you now. She walked out, the doors closed behind her. For a long moment the council chamber remained frozen. Then chaos erupted. Delegates shouted at each other. They demanded order. The smaller species looked at each other with expressions that mixed confusion with something else, something that looked almost like hope. Chancellor sat down heavily in his chair. His advisor leaned close. Should we send ships to stop them from leaving? We could force them to negotiate. Shook his head slowly. And start a war, over what? They are a minor species with limited technology. Let them isolate themselves. In a few months they will realize they cannot survive without council resources and trade. They will come back, begging for readmission on any terms we offer. His advisor nodded. Of course, Chancellor, they have no choice. But could not shake the memory of that smile. In his long political career, he had seen many expressions on the faces of defeated species: anger, fear, desperation, resignation. He had never seen anyone look so genuinely happy to walk away from everything. That night across human space, the message went out. Every human vessel, every trader, every diplomat, every tourist began the journey home. Space stations were quietly evacuated. Outposts were shut down. Research vessels completed their work and disappeared. On Earth, people gathered in the streets, not in protest, not in fear. They gathered in celebration. 300 years of humiliation had ended. 300 years of compromise and begging and being told they were not good enough. It was over. The borders closed. The communication channels went dark, and humanity disappeared behind a wall of silence. The galaxy had told them they would never be equals, so humanity had decided to stop asking for permission. In the darkness behind their borders, they began to build something new, something that would change everything. They had spent 3 centuries learning what the galaxy thought was possible. Now, they would spend their time discovering what was actually possible when nobody was there to tell them otherwise. 6 months passed, and the galaxy waited for humanity to break. The council experts had made their predictions with complete confidence. Humans depended on alien technology for their medical systems. They needed rare minerals from council-controlled mining operations. Their economy would collapse within weeks without access to galactic trade networks. They would come crawling back, humiliated and desperate, ready to accept any terms the council offered. But weeks turned into months. The borders of human space remained sealed. No ships came out. No messages were sent. No desperate pleas for readmission arrived at council headquarters. There was only silence. Chancellor stood in his private office, staring at the star map that covered one entire wall. Human territory was marked in gray now, the color the council used for dead zones and unexplored regions. He had spent more time looking at that gray patch in the past 6 months than he had spent thinking about humanity in the previous 3 centuries. "Report," he said to his intelligence chief, a thin named. His expression was troubled. "We have attempted 17 separate reconnaissance missions into human space, Chancellor, all using our most advanced stealth technology, ships that can hide from any known sensor system. And none returned. We detected their destruction, quick, clean. They knew exactly where our ships were, even though that should be impossible." Paused. The last ship managed to transmit a partial message before it was destroyed. Just 2 words. They said they knew, as if the humans were waiting for them. His hands tightened behind his back. What about signals intelligence, communication intercepts? Nothing, Chancellor. Their entire territory has gone dark. No transmissions of any kind that we can detect. Either they have developed communication methods we cannot intercept, or they are maintaining complete radio silence across their entire civilization. Shook his head. 40 billion people and not a single leaked transmission in 6 months. The discipline required for that is concerning. The Chancellor walked to his window and looked out at the capital city. Millions of went about their daily lives below, confident in their superiority, unaware of the growing fear in their government. What about human citizens in neutral space, traders, tourists? Gone, said simply. Every single one. We have searched every station, every port, every colony in neutral territory. There is not a single human being outside their borders. They all went home before the deadline, every last one. That is impossible. There were millions of humans living and working outside their territory. They all left, voluntarily, without protest, without exception. His voice dropped lower. Chancellor, I have been doing intelligence work for 200 years. I have studied every species in this galaxy. I have never seen anything like this. Complete, perfect coordination across an entire species, as if they all received the same order and obeyed without question. Felt a chill run down his spine. Humans are chaotic, individualistic. They argue among themselves constantly. That was always considered their greatest weakness. Perhaps we were wrong about that, replied quietly. Perhaps their arguing was a choice, not a weakness, and perhaps when they choose to act together. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. In the following weeks, strange reports began filtering in from across the galaxy. A AL mining consortium had established a claim in the neutral zones, an area of space that belonged to no species. One morning, their entire operation was simply gone, not destroyed. Gone. Every gram of valuable ore extracted. Every piece of equipment vanished. The only trace left behind was a faint energy signature that their scientists could not identify. A research station detected an unknown vessel passing through their system. It moved faster than any known ship design allowed. When they tried to scan it, their instruments registered nothing, as if the ship did not exist, as if it was a ghost. Traders in the border regions shared stories in whispered voices. They spoke of human ships appearing from nowhere, conducting silent business with independent colonies, then vanishing before anyone could respond. The ships were sleek and strange, covered in technology that no one recognized. The Merchant Guild sent a formal complaint to the council. Someone was stealing their business in the neutral zones. Someone was offering better prices, better technology, better terms, and that someone was not using any known trade routes or communication channels. Called an emergency meeting of the Security Council. The representatives of the 5 elder races gathered in the sealed chamber, their faces grim. The humans are clearly still active, the AL delegate hissed. They have not collapsed, they are not suffering, they are expanding their operations in secret. Impossible, the representative protested. They do not have the technology for what you are describing. 6 months ago, their ships were barely capable of basic faster-than-light travel. 6 months ago, said slowly, we thought we knew what humans were capable of. We were clearly mistaken. The room fell silent. We should send a diplomatic mission, suggested the delegate, a rare voice of caution. Offer to negotiate, find out what they want. They told us what they wanted, replied. They wanted to be left alone, we should have listened. But even as he spoke, he knew that leaving them alone was no longer an option. Something was happening behind those closed borders. Something that was changing the balance of power in ways the council had never anticipated. He made a decision. The council would send a formal diplomatic vessel to human space, not a spy ship, not a military probe, a proper diplomatic mission carrying offers of renewed partnership on more favorable terms. Surely the humans would at least talk. The ship launched 3 days later. It carried the council's most experienced negotiators and a message of reconciliation. It reached the border of human space and transmitted its peaceful intentions. For 6 hours, there was no response. Then a human destroyer appeared directly behind the diplomatic vessel. It had not come through any jump gate. It had not been detected on approach. It was simply there, as if it had always been there. The human captain's face appeared on screen. She was young, calm, and completely unimpressed by the diplomatic credentials being frantically displayed. "Human space is closed," she said simply. "Turn around, go home." "We carry an important message from the High Chancellor himself," the lead diplomat protested. "Offers of reconciliation, new terms for readmission to the Council." The human captain's expression did not change. "We said we were closed. We meant it. We are not interested in your terms. We are not interested in your counsel. We are not interested in your reconciliation." She paused. "You have 1 hour to leave our border region. If you are still here after that, we will consider it an act of aggression." The diplomatic vessel fled. Back on, the Chancellor read the report with growing dread. The humans had not yelled. They had not threatened. They had simply stated facts with absolute confidence. They did not need the Council. They did not want the Council. And somehow, in just 6 months, they had developed technology that made the galaxy's greatest powers look like children playing with toys. What were they building in there? What would emerge when they finally decided to open their borders again? For the first time in 12,000 years, the Galactic Council faced something it had never experienced before. Fear. The swarm had returned, and the galaxy trembled. Every 3,000 years, the horde emerged from the dark spaces between galaxies. They were not truly alive, not in any way that made sense. They were machines built from organic matter, driven by a single purpose: consume everything, grow larger, consume more. The last time they had come, it had taken the combined military might of every council species 200 years to push them back. Now they were early, and they were larger than any previous incursion. Chancellor stood before the emergency council session, his face pale as he presented the military projections. The holographic display showed the swarm's trajectory, a massive red wave sweeping toward the galaxy's outer rim. "At current speed, they will reach territory in 4 months, the military commander reported. "We estimate their numbers at approximately 800 billion individual units. That is 3 times larger than the previous incursion." Gasps echoed through the chamber. "Our combined fleet strength is insufficient to stop them at the border," the commander continued. "We will need to establish a defensive line deeper in space. We estimate losses of 40 to 60 star systems before we can halt their advance. Civilian casualties will be in the billions." The delegate's face went white. Her people would bear the first and heaviest losses. Her worlds would burn while the rest of the galaxy mobilized. "How long until we can defeat them?" someone asked. "Unknown. The previous incursion took 200 years to repel, and they were smaller. This could take longer, much longer." The chamber fell into despair. Species that had spent competing against each other now faced extinction together. Old rivalries suddenly seemed meaningless in the face of absolute destruction. In the silence, a junior delegate raised her hand. "What about the humans?" Every head turned toward her. The question hung in the air like something dangerous. "The humans have sealed their borders," Chancellor said carefully. "They have made it clear they want nothing to do with council affairs." "But the swarm will eventually reach them too," the junior delegate pressed. "If we fall, they will be next. Surely they must understand that." Hesitated. The thought of asking humanity for help was humiliating, but the thought of extinction was worse. "Send them a message," he said finally. "Explain the situation. Ask if they will join the defense effort." The message was sent. For 3 days, there was no response. The council waited in agonized silence while the swarm continued its approach. Military planners made evacuation schedules. Religious leaders held ceremonies for the doomed worlds. Parents held their children and wondered if there would be a future. On the fourth day, something appeared in orbit around the Council's capital station. It was a ship, but like no ship anyone had ever seen. It was sleek and elegant, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. It had not come through any jump gate. It had not been detected on approach. One moment there was empty space, and the next moment it was there. The station's defense systems locked on immediately, weapons charged, alerts sounded. Then a human woman appeared on the main deck of the station. She did not walk through any door. She did not arrive by shuttle or transport beam. She was simply there, standing in the middle of the crowded corridor, as if she had always been there. Security forces surrounded her instantly. She did not react to the weapons pointed at her face. She simply smiled and said, "Take me to the council chamber. You called. We decided to answer." It was. But she was changed. Her uniform was different now, made of material that seemed to glow faintly from within. Her eyes held a depth that had not been there before, as if she had seen things that no one in this galaxy could imagine. Lines of light traced patterns beneath her skin, visible when she moved. The security forces escorted her to the council chamber. When she walked in, every delegate rose to their feet, some in outrage at her intrusion, some in desperate hope, all in shock at what they were seeing. Chancellor stepped forward. "Ambassador, you received our message." "We received it," confirmed. "We have been watching your situation develop. We decided it was time to talk." "You have been watching. How? Your borders are sealed. You have no presence outside your territory." Smile widened slightly. "Chancellor, did you really believe that when we closed our borders we stopped paying attention to the galaxy? We simply stopped letting you pay attention to us." She walked to the center of the chamber, to the spot where only chancellors were permitted to stand. "We know about the swarm. We know its trajectory, its composition, its weaknesses. We probably know more about it than your own military analysts." "That is impossible. Our sensor networks are the most advanced in the galaxy." "They were," agreed, 6 months ago." She raised her hand and a holographic display appeared, not from any projector in the room. The light came from her hand itself. It showed ships, thousands of ships, human ships in designs that made the Council's chief engineers gasp in disbelief. "When you told us we would never be your equals, we decided to stop trying to meet your standards," explained. "We threw away everything we had learned from you, every assumption, every limitation, every rule about what was possible and what was not." She looked around the chamber. "Did you know that the entire foundation of your physics is wrong? Your theories about faster-than-light travel, about energy generation, about the fundamental nature of space itself, all wrong, not slightly wrong. Completely, fundamentally wrong." The chief scientist sputtered in outrage. "Our science has been refined over 12,000 years. It is the most accurate understanding of the universe ever developed." "It is the most accurate understanding you could develop while believing you already knew the answers," replied calmly. "Humans had no such assumption. We asked different questions. We found different answers." She gestured at herself. "This technology that allows me to stand here, to appear anywhere I wish, to communicate across any distance instantly. We developed it in 3 months, because no one told us it was impossible." The chamber was silent. Every delegate stared at the holographic fleet display, at the ships that represented capabilities beyond anything they had imagined. "You came here to help us," Chancellor said slowly. "Why? We treated your people badly for 300 years." Considered the question. "Because the swarm does not care about politics. It does not care about history. It will consume your worlds and then it will consume ours. We could hide behind our borders, use our new technology to protect ourselves while you all burned." She shook her head. "But that is not who we are. Humans do not abandon others to die, even others who have wronged us." She stepped closer to the Chancellor. "We will help you, we will destroy the swarm, but understand this clearly. We are not doing this to earn your approval. We are not doing this to rejoin your council. We are doing this because it is right." Her voice hardened slightly. "And when it is over, things will be different. We will not go back to begging for scraps at your table. We will not accept containment or restrictions or being treated as lesser beings. The old arrangement is dead. If there is to be a new arrangement, it will be as equals, true equals, or nothing at all." Chancellor looked into her eyes. He saw no anger there, no desire for revenge, just absolute, unshakable certainty. "We accept your terms," he said. Nodded once. "Then let us begin. The swarm reaches space in 4 months. We intend to meet it in 2 weeks." The chamber erupted in confused protests. 2 weeks was not enough time to mobilize a fleet. It was not enough time for anything. But simply smiled and disappeared. One moment she was there. The next moment she was gone. And across human space, the fleet began to move. Admiral James stood on the bridge of the UEC Defiance and watched the swarm approach. It looked like a living storm of metal and flesh, billions of individual units moving in perfect coordination. Each unit was roughly the size of a small shuttle, armed with weapons that could tear through conventional hull plating like paper. Together, they had consumed civilizations. They had ended species. They were the galaxy's oldest nightmare. James smiled. He had been waiting for this moment his entire life. The neural interface implanted at the base of his skull hummed with data. Fleet positions, enemy movements, power distributions, probability calculations. Information that would have overwhelmed any normal mind flowed through his consciousness like water. 6 months ago, this technology had not existed. Now it was standard equipment for every human ship commander. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his tactical officer announced. Lieutenant Sarah was young, brilliant, and connected to the same neural network that linked the entire fleet. When she spoke with the knowledge of 10,000 ship captains. "The swarm has detected us," continued. "They are adjusting their formation to intercept." James nodded. The swarm was predictable. That was its weakness. It consumed and grew, following the same patterns it had followed for millions of years. It had never encountered anything that did not fight by the same rules. "Signal the fleet," James ordered. "Begin Operation Harvest." 1,000 human ships flickered and vanished from normal space. On the observation deck of a battleship positioned safely behind the battle lines, Commander watched in confusion. One moment the human fleet had been there. The next moment, empty space. No engine signatures, no jump gate activation. They had simply ceased to exist. "What happened?" she demanded. "Where did they go?" Her sensor officer shook his head helplessly. "Unknown, Commander. They did not move, they just disappeared." Then the swarm began to die. The human ships reappeared inside the swarm formation. Not at the edges where defensive fire could be concentrated. Inside, among the enemy. They materialized, weapons already firing, then vanished again before the swarm could respond. Appeared, fired, vanished, appeared somewhere else, fired again. It was not a battle, it was a hunt. On the Defiance, James felt the flow of combat through his neural link. Every ship in his fleet moved as one organism, coordinated by artificial minds that processed information faster than any biological brain could follow. The swarm's hive intelligence tried to adapt, tried to predict where the human ships would appear next. It was always wrong. "They are attempting to form a defensive sphere," reported, "concentrating their numbers to reduce our angle of attack." "Let them," James replied. "It will make targeting easier." The human fleet adjusted instantly. Instead of appearing among scattered units, they materialized at the edges of the concentrated mass, weapons firing inward. The swarm had made itself a bigger target. Commander watched in growing disbelief as the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was systematically torn apart. The swarm outnumbered the human fleet 800,000 to 1. It should have been impossible. The numbers alone should have guaranteed victory for the Horde. But numbers meant nothing when you could not hit your enemy. Numbers meant nothing when every shot your enemy fired found its mark. Numbers meant nothing when your enemy fought like ghosts, appearing and vanishing at will, striking from directions that should not exist. "Get me a communication channel to the human flagship," ordered. It took several minutes to establish the link. Human communication technology was apparently so advanced that equipment struggled to interface with it. Admiral's face appeared on screen. He looked calm, almost relaxed, as if this was nothing more than a routine exercise. "Commander," he greeted her, "is there a problem?" "I need to understand what I am seeing," said. "Your ships, they are appearing and disappearing. They are moving faster than light without jump gates. How is this possible?" Considered the question. "Your species believes that space is fixed, that it has a shape, a structure, rules that cannot be broken. We discovered that space is more like water than stone. It can be bent, folded, moved." He paused as his ship vanished from one location and reappeared in another, weapons firing continuously. "We are not moving through space. We are moving space around us." "That contradicts everything we know about physics." "Yes," agreed simply, "it does." The battle raged for 12 hours. By human standards, it was almost leisurely. The swarm could not adapt fast enough. Every time it developed a new tactic, the humans had already anticipated it and moved on. Every time it concentrated its forces, the humans scattered them. Every time it tried to flee, the humans cut off its escape. And throughout it all, not a single human ship was destroyed. By the time the last swarm unit was eliminated, the galaxy's observer fleets had witnessed something that would fundamentally change their understanding of warfare. The humans had fought like nothing anyone had ever seen. They had treated the greatest existential threat in galactic history like a minor inconvenience. But the surprises were not over. In the weeks that followed, human ships spread across space, not as conquerors but as helpers. Medical vessels arrived at refugee stations, carrying treatments that had never existed before. Diseases that the galaxy considered incurable were cured in hours. Injuries that should have been fatal were healed completely. Human engineers arrived at damaged space stations and repaired them using materials that scientists could not identify. They strengthened structures, improved systems, upgraded technology, all without asking for anything in return. A human scientist visited the Academy of Sciences and gave a lecture on fundamental physics. She explained concepts that they had been struggling with for thousands of years, casually solving problems that had occupied their greatest minds for generations. When asked how humanity had developed such understanding so quickly, she simply shrugged. "We asked different questions," she said. "When you told us what was impossible, we wondered what would happen if it was not impossible. What would the universe look like if your assumptions were wrong? What could we achieve if we ignored your rules?" She smiled. The answers were interesting. Chancellor received reports from across the galaxy, and each one made him feel smaller than the last. The humans were not just militarily superior. They were superior in every field: medicine, engineering, physics, biology, chemistry. Every area where humanity had once been considered primitive, they now surpassed the elder races by generations. He finally understood what had happened. For 300 years, humanity had been forced to learn galactic technology. They had been taught that the Council's methods were the only methods. They had been told what was possible and what was not. When they left, they threw all of that away. They started fresh with no assumptions, no limitations, no one telling them what could not be done. And in just 6 months, they had 12,000 years of galactic progress. They had not contained humanity. They had not limited human potential. They had only delayed it. And now that potential was unleashed. Sat alone in his office, looking at the star map. Human territory was no longer marked in gray. It glowed with the same gold color used for the great powers of the galaxy, but looking at that golden patch, knew that the humans were no longer just another great power. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. And soon they would decide what to do with their power. The universe held its breath, waiting to see what humanity would choose. The swarm was gone. Its remnants had fled into the void between galaxies, so badly broken that analysts predicted it would be 10,000 years before they could threaten anyone again. The greatest existential threat in galactic history had been eliminated in less than a month. The galaxy was saved, and now it waited in terrified anticipation for what would come next. Every species had the same question. What would the humans do with their power? They had demonstrated capabilities that made the combined might of the Council look primitive. They could conquer the entire galaxy if they chose. They could dominate, subjugate, enslave. They could take revenge for 3 centuries of humiliation. Instead, they sent a message, would address the Council. All species were invited to attend. The chamber was packed beyond capacity. Delegates stood in the aisles. Observers crowded every balcony. Screens broadcast the session to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see what humanity would demand. Walked in alone. She wore the same glowing uniform, the same calm expression. She moved to the center of the chamber, to the spot where only chancellors had ever stood. "Thank you for coming," she said simply. Chancellor stepped forward. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. The weight of recent events showed in every line of his face. "Ambassador, the Council formally thanks humanity for its intervention against the swarm. You saved countless lives. You saved entire civilizations." Nodded, "We did what was necessary." The Council would like to discuss terms for humanity's reintegration into the galactic community. His voice was careful. "We are prepared to offer significant concessions, expanded territory, improved trade rights, a seat on the Security Council, whatever humanity requires." Was quiet for a moment. She looked around the chamber at the thousands of faces watching her, fear in some, hope in others, resignation in many. "We are not here to rejoin the old council," she said. A murmur ran through the chamber. The galactic accords were built on a simple assumption, that some species are naturally superior to others, that those who arrived first, who developed technology first, who claimed territory first, have the right to decide what everyone else is allowed to do. Shook her head. Humanity was told for 300 years that we were inferior, not because of anything we did, not because of any failure or fault, simply because we arrived late. She paused to let her words settle. We reject that assumption entirely. We reject the idea that age equals wisdom. We reject the idea that precedence equals worth. We reject the idea that any species has the right to contain, restrict, or control another. Chancellor spread his hands. "What do you propose instead?" Raised her hand, and a document materialized in the air before every delegate. It was written in every language in the galaxy, automatically translated, instantly accessible. "This is the Compact of Equal Stars," she announced. "A new agreement for a new era." She began to explain. Every species would have equal representation. No tiered membership, no junior species, no probationary periods. Every world would have the same vote, the same rights, the same protections. Trade would be based on mutual benefit, not historical dominance. Technology would be shared freely, not hoarded as leverage. Military protection would be guaranteed to all, expected from all. The elder races listened in growing discomfort. The document would strip away every privilege they had accumulated over. Their special status, their controlling votes, their right to decide what younger species could and could not do. "This is unacceptable," the owl delegate hissed. "You are asking us to abandon 12,000 years of tradition, to treat primitive species as our equals, to share technology that we developed with races that have contributed nothing." turned to face him. "You are correct. That is exactly what we are asking. And if we refuse, then nothing changes between us. You keep your traditions, you keep your hierarchy, you keep your council." His voice remained calm. "And humanity keeps to itself. We will trade with willing partners. We will help those who ask. We will stay out of your internal affairs. We will not try to force you to accept our values." "But you could," the owl pressed. "Your technology is superior. Your military is unstoppable. You could conquer us all." "Yes," agreed simply, "we could." The chamber fell absolutely silent. "We could conquer your worlds. We could impose our will by force. We could make you bow to humanity the way you made others bow to you," looked around the chamber. "But we will not. Do you want to know why?" No one spoke. Because the galaxy does not need another conqueror. It does not need another hierarchy. It does not need another species at the top, telling everyone else what they are allowed to be. She stepped closer to the owl delegate. "We spent 300 years being told we were inferior. We remember what that feels like. We will not inflict that experience on anyone else, not even on those who inflicted it on us." She turned back to address the entire chamber. "The compact of equal stars is an invitation, not a demand, not a threat, an invitation. We are offering to share everything we have learned, every breakthrough, every technology, every discovery. We are offering to help any species that wants our help. We are offering partnership, true partnership, based on mutual respect and genuine equality." She paused. "You can accept this invitation, or you can refuse it. The choice is yours, but understand this: we will never again ask for your approval. We will never again beg for acceptance. We will never again accept being treated as less than anyone else." Her voice hardened slightly. "We came to this chamber 6 months ago as supplicants, and you told us we would never be your equals. We accepted that judgment. We left, and we discovered that you were wrong." Chancellor stepped forward slowly. He had ruled the council for over a century. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had navigated crises that would have destroyed lesser leaders. But he had never faced anything like this. He looked at her calm confidence, at her complete lack of aggression, at the absolute certainty in her eyes. "Why?" he asked quietly. "After everything we did to your people, after centuries of humiliation and restriction, why offer us partnership instead of revenge?" Considered the question carefully. "Because revenge is what you would have done," she said finally. "Because domination is what you would have expected. Because conquest is what you understand." She smiled slightly. "We wanted to show you something different. We wanted to show you that power does not have to mean control, that strength does not have to mean subjugation, that the species you dismissed as primitive has values that your elder civilizations never developed." She looked around the chamber one last time. "This is who humanity is. We do not need to push others down to stand tall. We do not need to control others to feel powerful. We believe that everyone deserves dignity, everyone deserves respect, everyone deserves the chance to reach their full potential." Her voice softened. "That is what we are offering, not dominion, not hierarchy, just equality, true equality for everyone." She fell silent. The chamber remained still. Then Chancellor reached into his robe and pulled out his voting seal, the symbol of authority that had shaped galactic politics for 12,000 years. "The delegation accepts the compact of equal stars," he announced. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The most powerful species in the galaxy, accepting equality with races they had dominated for, but understood what the others had not yet grasped. This was not about power or politics or advantage. This was about who they wanted to be. The humans had held up a mirror, and the galaxy had to decide what it saw. One by one, other voting seals were raised. The dozens of smaller species who had never dared to hope for equality, and finally, reluctantly, even the owl. Watched the votes accumulate. She showed no triumph, no satisfaction, just quiet acceptance of a decision that had always been the galaxy's to make. When the final count was announced, She simply nodded. "Then we have work to do," she said, "together." She walked out of the chamber, not as a conqueror, not as a victor, just as one species among many ready to build something new. Outside, the stars waited, and for the first time in 12,000 years, they belonged to everyone equally.